Been looking for a scraper plane for a little while. So when this one was on special coming up to Christmas, I couldn't help but purchase it. I've got number 80s and 81s and hand scrapers, but I just really like the look of a scraper plane for the ease of the ergonomics. This one from Luban, they call their number 73, looks pretty decent straight out of the box. Nice brass features, a hardwood tote and knob, and it all looked pretty tidy as I cleaned it up and got the protection grease or whatever it is off it, and the blade out, did the same with that. Made sure everything was nice and tight, and decided, well, let's see how it goes straight from the box. I ran the straight edge over it quickly. It's not too bad front to back. Side to side was showing some dips and hollows, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. So one final wipe down, and I'll put the blade back in. And we'll give it a run. Blade just drops into that slot there, and these wheels adjust the angle of that blade. So we've got a bit of a tilt forward, locked it in place, and I had this offcut of floorboard, Benke old hardwood floorboard. I've got a fair bit of protrusion here on the blade, but it was handling it okay. I've done nothing but wipe the grease off and put the blade in, adjusted at an angle, and it's not doing too bad. Taking some decent shavings on this board, which would be a struggle with a hand plane given the grain on the board. So I tried the blade up a little bit straighter and with a little bit less bite, and yeah, look, it's still working okay, but you can see a bit of chatter there as it bounces across the rough cut timber surface. But again, it's taking shavings and doing exactly what you'd expect it to do. A little bit too much blade out, we'll take a bit out, and this is all sped up footage, of course. I'm not planing nearly that fast, and yeah, taking nice little fine shavings. Board's just sitting there on my Stanton bench up against the bench top, and it's worked quite well. Put a little bit more blade out. Just trying to get the blade at a depth that makes it not chatter, but still takes reasonable shavings and cleans the board up at a reasonable pace. And you can see those shavings there. There's just, if you get that adjustment right, it does a lovely job of smoothing out the top of that board. So yeah, at this stage it was doing exactly what I would hope it would do. So I took the blade out and proceeded to level the back out There's a few hollows there, as you can see, that need dealing with, but after a few minutes on the coarse stone, working it side to side, we ended up with a pretty good result. Moving through the fine and the extra fine, you can see here that doesn't look too bad. There's a little hollow there towards the bottom, but the first couple of mil of the edge is all nice and flat, so it's definitely going to work a lot better than it was straight out of the box. I then worked on the 45-degree bevel, maybe do a bit of a tidy up. Didn't take much work to get that done, and then finish that off on the leather strop. The next step was to place 2 pieces of writing paper down on the bench, then setting the plane with that gap between them. I was able to put the blade in with a very small projection beyond the body. You might note I didn't put a hook on the blade, and that's a bit contentious, I guess, but the Lee Nielsen instructional video doesn't put a hook on, whereas some of the other YouTubers of renown do put a hook on, but at this stage I wasn't appearing to need one. So I set the depth using the paper, and then I made sure that I was at the recommended 15-degree angle for the blade by setting that up with a gauge. So back to the floorboard and see how we're going now. Nice smooth passes, no chatter, and just taking some very nice shavings. Albeit narrow, but nonetheless some nice shavings. I turned my attention to the flatness of the sole, and just in front of the mouth I had a dip of just under 0.18 of a millimetre side to side. I turned my attention then to the area behind the mouth, and here I ended up with a dip in the middle of 0.25 of a millimetre. So after some discussion with the company that I bought the plane from, who offered quickly to replace it under warranty, we decided that we would have a go at levelling the base. So here I am just checking my glass plate is okay to work with, and we spent quite a few hours at the bench working on the level of the base of this plane, and you can see how difficult it is to get this wet and dry to stay in place. I didn't want to make the whole place wet and messy by sticking the paper down, but you can even see here now that there's very high ridges running down each side of the plane base, and We went through quite a few sheets of paper and changed our process to try and improve the efficiency of what we were doing, and set up this jig with a old sander belt stretched out to try and improve the operation, and then ultimately returned to the wet and dry, to the finer wet and dry on the glass. The discussions with the retailer continued while I was working on this, and it was their opinion that a small depression in front of the mouth wouldn't overly affect the operation of a scraper plane. But I wanted to get it a lot closer than what we see there. And we continued to work on it, and ultimately at the end, when I basically said enough's enough, we ended up with a finish in front of the mouth that was 0.04. So about maybe I'd maybe taken off 0.12 or so of a millimetre out of that dip. I still had a little dip in the front. You can even see it there on the shot between that 12 and 13 mark. You can see that dark line. That's the dip that I was trying to get out of the plane. I really would have loved to have got that down a little bit more, but it's probably within spec for the how the factory planes came out 100 years ago. I haven't really looked at that spec. So there you have it. This plane does take nice shavings. I'm happy I spent that time working on the base, and maybe one day I'll get back and do a little bit more. I'd like a granite plate if I could find one that was flat enough to just keep working away over time. I could glue some paper down and do it in my spare time. But if you're after a scraper plane, this one will no doubt fit the bill. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.